Over the past few years, you may have noticed certain apps transitioning from email password authentication to just email link authentication. And there's two main benefits to doing this. First, your users don't have to remember a password, and two, it provides a frictionless sign-up process that makes it more likely for you to onboard new users. One app that does this is Open Collective, and the possibility just became available to Firebase developers a couple days ago. And I wanted to send a thank you out to all Angular Firebase Pro members because your subscription allows me to donate to other open source projects through Open Collective, and I'm very grateful to be able to do that. In today's video, we're going to use Firebase to build our own passwordless auth system, which will take a user's email, send them out an email link that will authenticate them into our Firebase app. I'm starting with a brand new Angular app and making sure that it has a router, then generating a new component called Passwordless Auth. From there, you'll need a Firebase project with Angularfire 2 installed, and if you're starting from an existing project, make sure to update the Firebase SDK to the latest version. Then go into the Firebase console for your project and enable the email link method under the email password settings. Now, quickly taking a look at the app module, you should have the Angularfire module as well as Angularfire Auth in here with your Firebase web credentials. Then initialize the app down here in the import section. From there, we'll jump over to the router and we'll route our component to the login path. What's going to happen is the user will initially land on this component, they'll get their email link, and then they'll come back to this component with a special auth code that we can use to log them in. Depending on your requirements, you may want to break this down into two separate components, one to get the actual link, and then another one that they're redirected to actually sign in. For the sake of simplicity here, we'll just do everything in a single component. The end result should look like this. The user enters their email address, we notify them that we sent the email, they go into their inbox, and then they have a link that will redirect them back to this component. Firebase includes a special code in the URL, and they also need to return with the same email address that they tried to sign in with for security reasons. And the way we keep track of that between redirects is by saving the email in local storage. If the user clicks the link and we don't have the email address in local storage, we'll need to prompt them for it again. That's most likely to happen if they request the link on one device and then try to sign in on a different device. In progressive web apps, we can handle this with just a simple browser prompt. And if the user tries to enter an email that doesn't match, it should throw an error. So we'll build a component that has a way to display those errors. Then if we try to redirect the link again, and this time enter the correct email address, we should get authenticated successfully. We can start this implementation out in the component type script. We're going to need Angularfire Auth as well as the Angular router. Then we'll jump down here and define a few properties to manage the state of this component. First, we have the user, which is an observable. If it's null, we know the user is not logged in. If it's an object, we know the user is logged in. We have an email string, which represents the form input. Then we have a Boolean that will flip to true once the email has been sent. And lastly, a string that we can use to display any error messages. From there, we'll inject Angularfire Auth and the router in the constructor. Then we'll define our user as the Angularfire Auth state observable. Then we need to get the full URL in the browser, which we can do with the router by calling router URL. Then we're going to write a method that looks at this URL and determines if it's a valid Firebase email link URL. And if so, it will go ahead and log in the user. But first we need to have the user request the email link in the first place. And to do that, we need to define some action code settings. In this case, I'm just saying the redirect URL is going to be localhost 4200 to our login component. Then because we're in an async function and also we're going to be interacting with the DOM, I'm going to wrap everything in a try-catch block. To save the email address in local storage, we need to interact with the DOM window, and that could fail with things like server-side rendering, so we wrap it in try-catch to make sure that that's a safe operation. This method here will happen when the user clicks on the login button, and we're going to await the promise send sign-in link to email, which resolves once that email's been sent. We just need to pass it the email string and the action code settings that we defined earlier. After that promise resolves, we need to set the email address in local storage because the user will be redirected to a new instance of our Angular app, and it will have no memory of the email address that was used. And then lastly, we'll flip our email sent variable to true, and if anything fails in here, we'll display it in the error message. So that handles the first part of the process. That sends the email out to the user, When they redirect, we want to confirm that it's a valid link and sign them into our app. The Firebase SDK can parse the link for us, which we do by calling isSignInWithEmailLink and passing it the URL that we get with the Angular router. If it is a valid link, then we need to check that the user has the same email address that they were redirected from. That should be the email that's in local storage, which we can call by saying get item email for sign-in. But if not, we can just use a browser prompt to have the user re-enter their email address after the redirect. At this point, we should have the two pieces we need to sign the user in, which is the email address and the URL. So we'll go ahead and pass those items to the sign in with email link method on the Firebase SDK. And that's a promise that should resolve with the logged in user. And lastly, we'll clean things up by removing the email for sign-in from local storage. Now we can put this all together in the HTML. The first thing I'll do is show a success message if the user's already logged in. Because our user is an observable, we can just unwrap it with the async pipe. Otherwise, we're going to display this login template. The role of the login template is to 1, collect the user's email address, and 2, give them a button to click to send the email out. To collect the email address, we can just add the ngModel directive here, and then bind it to the email property in our component type script. Then just below that, I'll add a button that's disabled if the email's already been sent, and when clicked, it will fire off the send email link method to the email address entered in the form. That's the main thing we need there, but I'll also go ahead and add another div here that will show a success message when the email's been sent, or an error message if there's any problem with the login process. And that's basically all there is to it. You should now have a working passwordless auth system in your Firebase app. If this video helped you, please like and subscribe, and if you want all kinds of other exclusive content related to Angular Firebase development, consider becoming a pro member at angularfirebase.com. You'll get a free copy of my book, as well as access to my full-length courses covering Ionic and Stripe payments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.